Hello, my name is Lesley Holdsworth and I'm a physiotherapist from Scotland. Physiotherapists have been autonomous practitioners in the UK since 1978, working as first contact practitioners in private practice, but within the public funded National Health Service access to physiotherapy is still mainly controlled by doctors, but things are definitely changing. This issue has been a long-standing research interest of mine, and I have spent the last 15 years researching and publishing about the efficacy of patient self-referral. While on a Winston Churchill Travel Fellowship in April 2011 to Australia, I was delighted to be able to conduct an interview with Prue Galley, who was at the fore during the tumultuous times during the 1970s in both Australia and the UK, in what can only be called the fight for autonomy that led to physiotherapists being able to practice truly independently. In my view, Prue can only be described as the pioneer, the trailblazer, the person who agitated for this fight on behalf of the profession. We physiotherapists have much to thank this very spunky lady for, and she still has such a passion for this topic. And for me personally, this has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my professional life, as I fully recognised that but for Prue, I would never have had the opportunity to follow my own professional interest in exploring the efficacy for self-referral. Prue, we all owe you such a great debt for your courage, your doggedness and your willingness to go where most would fear to tread. You are a truly inspirational lady, and it has been my privilege to have met you and to consider you as a kindred spirit and friend. What follows is Prue's account of that time, recorded for posterity so that all physiotherapists know their history.
So Prue, as a young person working as a physio in the 1970s, how would you describe the profession at that time?
Stultifying, because I'd been through my course, I had great ideas, or we'd all been trained with great ideas, but we were stuck. We were stuck because we really didn't have full autonomy, and something had to be done about it. But it was stultifying because where did you go?
So when you say that, can you tell us a bit more what it was like at that time? You know, if you're a working physio, you know, how much autonomy did you have?
Well, speaking in Australia, we were bound ethically by an ethic that said a physiotherapist wasn't to act in a professional capacity except on a referral from a medical or dental practitioner. And even though legally, as I subsequently found out, this was possible to do in all states except our largest, New South Wales, and this is true of the profession, we're very honourable, we're very correct, we're very ethical. And so people didn't step out of line. And this, I believed, was putting a bit of a damper on what we now had to offer. This wasn't true. I think it was quite correct in the 1900s that the code was brought forward to not allow us to really perform without that medical gatekeeper. But times had changed, education had improved our situation, and I'd been through a course, and frankly, I was at the time thinking that I might even pack up my bags and leave the profession. But I did love the work that we could do, and I could see the potential. So that was the situation there. As a young person, I was an irritated oyster.
So actually, what physiotherapists today will never probably really understand is what it was like,
yes.
and that, you know, to actually get patients, you could only have them if they've been referred to you by a doctor.
And yes, that's right. And actually, I'd come to Britain, and I'd worked in Britain, and I must say that I had a lot of, a great deal of experience and wonderful help. But again, here I was very conscious of this, more so actually in Britain than in Australia, because I was working in departments where, you know, we were having prescriptions.
Yes.
And when you've been trained a thinker and you've done science in your course, this is extremely stultifying. And yet you knew that there was potential in our profession to really grow and do a lot of work in preventive field where, frankly, you didn't need to have a medical referral.
Yes.
And so this, in my opinion, was what was stultifying the whole thing. And there were physiotherapists around who were wanting to, be correct, and quite rightly so. I can understand that. But times had changed, and so things needed to move on. And that was my mental set.
Good. So we've got an understanding now what it was like to be a physiotherapist at that time.
A young physiotherapist.
Yes. And we're talking here obviously about pre-1975, etc. But what first aroused your interest in questioning the status of the profession then? You describe your interest as being a logical, historical progression.
That's correct.
So what was it that first fired this?
Well, do you mean bringing in the challenging, getting a new ethical, code?
Yes.
Well, I talk about how I was approached by Jane Ben in...
But also, I think in our previous discussion you were telling me about the master's level study you were doing.
Oh, yes. I'm with you now. Yes, you brought me back onto that. Yes, in the early 70s, when I finished my physiotherapy degree, I mean, there was a bit of postgraduate stuff to do, but it didn't appeal. And I really felt that the education was a little bit on the narrow side, very focused. And so I wanted to get out and expand my knowledge. I enrolled in an arts education degree. And in the process of doing this, one of the areas we were focusing on in the later part of that was professionalism, because at that stage a lot of educators were interested in our profession too. And this forced the issue of me getting into the literature about professionalism. And much to my horror, I discovered that really, by definition, physiotherapists were calling themselves professional, but really autonomy is what it's all about. And we were relying for everything we did on this gatekeeper. And this was very distressing. And I thought, well, if we're going to go ahead as a profession and call ourselves truthfully a profession, something had to be done.
Yeah.
And so there was this. I looked into the history. This academic action had forced me to go and look at our own history. And sure, we had a code of ethics and all that kind of thing. But when you really started looking honestly, I thought we were beginning, I felt, to live a lie.
You were telling me earlier, Prue, about quite a pivotal moment in your life when you received a letter that actually really you felt laid down the gauntlet to you. So
well, you see, I was a bit of a rebel. I had actually, in fairness, in my state of Queensland, in the early 70s, there were quite a few people, and I think this was true everywhere. I mean, I know my friends in the UK, there were people feeling much the same, but there was a handful. But I know that in the early 1970s, our Queensland Council, or what the equivalent is, had thought that perhaps time was to perhaps relook at this ethical thing, this not being able to deal with our bit. And I was one of the threesome. They sort of had three of our council people, Louise van der Meen, who was the then secretary in Queensland, and then a person called Bev Sanahan. She's now no longer with us. And we sort of, I can remember, we used to meet under AMA House in Brisbane, and we were looking at our own ethics, and really our brief initially was to just look at the wording and everything, but it became perfectly clear that times had changed and there was a time to really be re-looking at the ethics. So this was going on, and then as I understand it, this was put forward to our federal group, and then the federal body then said, well, look, we'll have ethical committees going, we'll get things up and see what the other states are going to do. So there was all this background, there was ferment. I mean, I'd never, ever claim that I'm it. And so there was this ferment, and I think out of this ferment, there'd been a conference in Brisbane in 73, and of course by this stage I was a big loud mouth, being very, very vocal about it all. And this, obviously, somebody heard Jan Ben, the late Jan Ben, who was then the head of the Sydney School. And 1974, July 1974, completely out of the blue, I was sent this letter. They were having a conference in 75 in Sydney. And it was about, they were inviting me to write about ethical principles and patient referral. And very formal letter, but then at the bottom, scribbled in, is this handwritten note from Jan. Prue, I hear via the grapevine that you're interested in the future of referral. Do be big and brave and take up, the challenge. And I sort of thought about it and, and then a month later I thought, oh no, I'm just going to go for it. Here's a golden opportunity to, put my money where my mouth is.